Hi, everybody. My name is Arisa, and I'm joined again in the studio by Professor. Hello. And today we're going to be talking about English conversation strategies. So let's get right into it. Let's start with Professor. What is your first strategy for keeping an English conversation going? This is very important. Don't say, "I'm fine, thank you, and you?" You hear this all the time from second language English learners or non-native speakers. You learn this. It's one of the first things you learn in an English class. It's easy, it's good, it's basic, it's foundational. Okay, that's fine, but as soon as you can, switch it up. Because to me, when I meet a foreigner and they come up and say, "Hey, how are you?" And they say, "Oh, I'm fine, I'm good, whatever, how about you?" And they say, "I'm fine, thank you, and you?" It just seems almost robotic because they've said it so many times. When I hear that, I think, their English isn't that good. And inside, I'm just going to be really polite. Say hello, talk slowly, and try to get out of there as quick as I can. So to really impress the foreigner, in my opinion, the best way to do it is to say something you know. Use a big word or just like a slang word, something like that. When I hear that, I go, "Wow, man, I want to know what this person thinks. I want to get their point of view." And I'm really excited. Then I've had great conversations because of that. Yeah, that's a really, really good one. Actually, I think on this YouTube channel from a couple of years ago, there's an episode all about better answers to the question, "How are you?" Then, "I'm fine, thank you, and you?" If someone says, "Hey, how are you?" Don't just say, "I'm good, you," or "Fine, you." Never "I'm fine, thank you, and you?" Try to use a phrase that a native speaker would use. That's a clue to the native speaker that maybe this person is ready for a conversation beyond basic English. So that's a really good point. I like that. I didn't think of things not to do. I only thought of things to do. Okay, cool. Let's go to my first one. This strategy in general is just ask the other person a question. I think, and I'm guilty of this too, when I'm learning another language I tend to only get input, like somebody else is always asking me the questions, and then I forget myself to ask the other person a question. One question that I like to ask, or a variation, any kind of WH question is good, like a who, what, where, something like this. If you've been paying attention, you can use any way to transition in your conversation. This was in a previous episode. You can ask something like, "Anyway, up to anything fun this weekend?" This is a pretty casual conversational question that you can ask just about anybody, whether you've just met them or whether you've known them for a while. But just get in the habit of asking other people the question. Don't wait for someone else to ask you the question. So that's one strategy that I try to use to keep things going. Yeah, me too. I agree, and I'm going to say same cease because actually two of my questions were exactly what you said. I agree 100%. This is kind of cheating. These should be one, but so always ask questions. Again, you forget it's really easy. I'm really guilty of this, English or non-English, whatever, I'm guilty of this. The other thing is ask deep, open-ended questions. If you ask a yes or no question, like Arisa was saying, it just dead ends. You can't just say, "Do you like cheese?" Yes or no. So you want to say, "What do you think about cheese? What is your favorite kind?" And kind of open it up to something else and let it just kind of snowball. Right? Yeah, I think that's really a key. I have another variation on it, which I'll just continue on to because it kind of relates to what you're talking about. Like he's saying, always ask questions, always ask deep, open-ended questions. Like you just said, don't ask a yes or no question because yes or no ends with the yes or the no. One of the things that I'll do is use a pattern similar to this. "Hey, did you see?" Or, "Hey, did you hear about?" Blah, blah, blah. You can use this little blah, blah, blah as your placeholder. You can ask about the news, something funny you saw on the internet, something you heard from another friend, whatever. It's just a way to check in with the other person and say, "Oh, did you also experience this thing that I experienced? Let's talk about that." So that might be another question that you can use with people. I like that one. I really like that one because you have to stay within people's comfort zone. Maybe you ask, and they don't want to talk about it. They can say, "Oh yeah, I heard about that." And you can kind of feel the atmosphere and realize maybe I shouldn't talk about this, change the subject. Or they get passionate and start talking about it, and there you go, just let it go. Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'm guilty of is you do gotta keep returning it, right? Don't just say, "Oh yeah," and move on. Bring it back, ask them, "What about you?" That's a common thing I forget about. Yeah. Okay, good. I have one more. This one, use when you see fit. I'll just introduce it. Compliment the other person. This can be a nice strategy to show that you're enjoying the other person's company. It can be as simple as, "Oh, I like your shirt today." Or, "That's a nice dress you're wearing today." Or, "Did you get a new haircut? That looks good on you." Something like that. This is a nice way to make the other person maybe want to spend more time with you, I think. Yeah, I agree 100%. Two things. One, I think it's a good conversation starter sometimes. You've got to be careful with a stranger. It can be creepy, it can be uncomfortable, depending on what you're complimenting. But if it's something like a band t-shirt you both like, that's a great conversation starter and you feel connected. Number two, keep it honest. I love a sincere compliment. It really means a lot more and it really does butter them up. Get them open to having more conversations. But one thing people do which I don't like is, let's say they say, "Hey, nice shirt." And the person out of habit will say, "Oh, you too. I like your shirt too." Just my opinion, I don't think this feels really natural or sincere. I would save it, make a mental note and go, I need to return the favor. I need to give them a compliment. But wait until you notice something you really do like and say, "Hey, actually, I love blah blah blah." Yeah, I think that's a great point. You can sense whether someone is being sincere or not. What is your next strategy for continuing English conversation? Well, don't be afraid to open up. I like this one. A lot of people will be kind of shy, they won't open up too much. But I like this one because people return the favor. If you're just having small talk and you say, "The weather's nice today," you can only go so far. Don't be afraid to say something personal. Again, trust your judgment. Don't be a creep. We don't want to hear certain things about your life. Don't be weird, don't be strange. Opening up just means sharing something about yourself. It can be as simple as what you did last weekend, what you're going to do this weekend, or a project you have coming up. It doesn't mean you have to spill all your life secrets. But just showing you're willing to share something more personal can help ingratiate yourself or help the other person understand you better. That's a good tip. I like that tip. It's hard to do, though. It's a little scary to share parts of yourself, but it's good. It's a good way to meet people and make friends. All right, I think that's all. Is that all that you have? Yeah, that's all I got. Okay, all right. Well, those are some interesting strategies to keep an English conversation going. Give them a try if you're ever at a loss for words and don't know what to say. You can try one of these strategies and hopefully it will help you out. Please let us know if you have any other strategies or anything else that you use when you're having trouble keeping a conversation going. Leave us a comment and let us know what it is. Top 10 language learning strategies. Let's begin. 1. Befriend or date someone who speaks English. 2. Watch movies or listen to music in English. 3. Read English newspapers or magazines. 4. Record your voice and compare your pronunciation with native English speakers. 5. Download dialogue tracks and listen to English conversations. 6. Repeat the phrases that you hear out loud again and again. 7. Review all the lessons on Learn English with Professor to master them completely. 8. Read lines slowly at first, then reread and increase your speed. 9. Set small and measurable learning goals with your personal deadlines. 10. Try harder lessons to challenge yourself and improve faster. Ways to stop translating in your head. Let's get started. 1. Identify objects around you in English. The first way to stop translating in your head is to identify the objects around you in your target language. So, if you're studying English, that means look at the objects around the room, look at the things in your life, and think of them in English first. Start associating the words in your target language with your everyday life now. For example, if I see a computer, I should think computer in English instead of my native language. 2. Repeat phrases you hear native speakers use. Tip number 2 is to repeat the phrases you hear native speakers use. If you're watching this channel, a TV show, or a movie, listen to the way native speakers make those phrases. If you hear an interesting combination of words, try to repeat them yourself. Don't just listen. Try to say them yourself. If you're in a public space and it's difficult, practice in a place where you feel more comfortable. Just repeat them and get your mouth used to saying them. If you never actually say words, if you're only taking in, if you're only listening, and you're not actually producing the language, it's hard to practice and to really hone your pronunciation and improve it. When you listen to native speakers, try to repeat after them. For example, if you're studying English, you can try to repeat after this episode. You can repeat after the things I'm saying because maybe I'm using an expression or a certain series of vocabulary words together the way a native speaker would. It's a good idea to practice the ways that native speakers put their words together. So try to repeat after native speakers, especially when you're watching media. You can do this when you're reading books too. Try to read out loud interesting lines of books that you find, or something that maybe is difficult for you. It's a very nice practice tip. Make a situation where you can't escape into your native language. This essentially means to immerse yourself. Of course, going to that country or a place where you can speak only that language is very difficult for some of you. I totally understand. But if in your life you can create a situation in your library, in your room, in your house, somewhere for just an hour or a day. I don't know what your schedule is like. Create an environment where you have no choice but to use that language and cannot escape into your native language. You can't use your native language at all. It forces you to use the language that you're studying. If you are lucky enough to live in a country or a place where people speak the language you're studying, great. But you have to go out and interact with people. You have to put yourself in a place where you have no choice but to speak. It's very hard, very scary, and very embarrassing at first. But if you take the time to find places and make environments that are comfortable for you, where you feel comfortable making mistakes and asking questions, it's very valuable for your learning process. This is something I did. My Japanese wasn't very good for a long time, but then I started making friends who could not speak English. I did this by finding hobbies. I joined a group, a school where I could learn a hobby, and everything was taught only in Japanese. The people in my class spoke mostly Japanese. We would go out for drinks and food late at night or on weekends, and everybody spoke only Japanese. If I couldn't communicate even simply in Japanese, I had no hope of keeping that friendship together. It forced me to study and think about the words they were using, and to try to learn those words and patterns and how to produce them naturally myself. I was learning the vocabulary words the people around me were using and learning how to apply them on my own. That was only possible because I had no escape in those situations. Try to do that even if you can do it yourself in your house. It's super helpful, I think. Watch TV and movies in your target language without subtitles. Tip number 4 is to watch TV and movies in your target language without subtitles. Watching with subtitles can be very beneficial. If you want to watch something with subtitles on, great. But I sometimes find that I think too much about reading the subtitles and forget to listen. Maybe if you've seen a movie in your target language a few times with the subtitles on, try turning them off and think about the character's body language and the words they're using. You can always look up the words you don't know in a dictionary later, but try to focus completely on how people use their words. Try not to use subtitles. Another way to use TV and movies is to turn on the closed captions in the native language of the movie. This can be useful when the actual words spoken in the language appear on the screen. It's sometimes easier to catch a word if you see it visually and hear it at the same time. So this is sort of 2 points in one. 1. Watch movies without subtitles in your native language. 2. Watch movies with closed captioning in your target language. You can try these 2 things with TV and movies. Don't bring a dictionary to your lesson. Tip number 5 is not to bring a dictionary to your lesson. I understand that dictionaries, especially electronic ones, are very convenient. They are a great resource to have. However, it is detrimental to use them during a lesson when you're practicing conversation. If you reach a point in the conversation where you don't know a word, and you pull out your dictionary to look it up, it stops the flow of the conversation. Instead, try using a different strategy. If you find a word you don't know in conversation, explain it to your conversation partner. Maybe they know the word. If you're speaking with a native speaker, this is a chance for them to teach you a word. I find that when people take the time to teach me a word, I remember it much better than just looking it up in a dictionary. So try not to use a dictionary in conversation practice. It's not realistic. Instead, practice the skill of describing the vocabulary word you want to use. Learn how to ask for a vocabulary word from your partner. You can use expressions like, "What's the word that means?" or "It's this thing that does." This is an opportunity to describe characteristics or find a different way to communicate. Use your body language or other tools, but try not to use a dictionary in conversation. It destroys the flow. Train responses to common questions. Number 6 is to train responses to common questions. For example, a very common question in English is, "Hey, how are you?" You should know how to answer this question with a default response like, "I'm good." If it takes you a long time to answer this question, you need to practice. Sometimes students take a while to respond to common questions because they haven't trained their responses yet. Think about default responses you can quickly say. For example, "How are you?" can be answered with "I'm good," "I'm okay," or "not bad." Train a few responses until they feel natural. It will save you time and help the conversation move forward. Study with materials that don't provide a translation. The next tip is to study with materials that don't provide a translation. By this, I mean if you're using worksheets or textbooks with your target language and your native language side by side, it can be useful. However, studying materials only in your target language, with simplified explanations for detailed points in your target language, can be better. I'm not saying you should never use your native language to understand a grammar point or look up a word, but where possible, use materials with simplified explanations in your target language. It helps you learn to think in the language you're studying. You can practice this with books, written materials, episodes, and TV. Consider the level of vocabulary, the intended audience, children, young adults, and the speed of speech. For example, I can change the difficulty of an episode by adjusting my speech rate and vocabulary. We could make a very difficult episode series by leveling up vocabulary use or speaking very quickly. Or we could make an easier series like our English in 3 minutes series. We can also use very simple vocabulary and speak at a low rate of speech. So maybe right now this is a very intermediate level episode. Please think about that, not just for written materials but also for your audio and visual materials. Think about who your audience is, the level of the material, and so on. It can be really fun, and it can be helpful to think about your target language in your target language. All right, we're almost done. Study phrases in addition to single vocabulary. The next tip is to study phrases in addition to single vocabulary words. Yes, of course, vocabulary is important, but I find it personally very, very useful to look at how a vocabulary word is used in a phrase, because sometimes using it in a phrase helps you understand the nuance of that vocabulary word really, really well. For example, a word like crazy in English can mean something different depending on the situation where it is used. It could mean a person who is mentally confused or mixed up, something really good, or something really bad. If we look only at the word crazy, it's quite difficult to understand the meaning of the word. However, if you look at the way the word is used in a phrase, you can get a lot more information. So take a look at the way people use words in phrases, not just single vocabulary words. You can learn a lot more that way, I think. Do your daily activities in English where possible. The next tip is to do your daily activities in your target language. If you're studying English, that means trying to do some daily activities in English if possible. This can be very, very boring stuff, but just think about it when you're doing the activity. For example, right now I'm filming an episode for Learn English with Professor, or I'm going to work. I'm cooking breakfast, or I'm doing the laundry. What do I have to do tomorrow? Try thinking about your everyday life in English if you're studying English. Think about your everyday activities and the people you meet. What are you doing? This is a way to help you practice your verbs. If you don't know how to explain something you're doing, for example, drawing a picture, you can check a dictionary at that point and learn that you need to use the verb draw. By thinking about your everyday activities in your target language, you can find these little gaps in your knowledge and vocabulary. This is a really good and kind of funny way to study. Use a learner's dictionary for new words. The last tip is to use a learner's dictionary for new words. In English, there are learner's dictionaries available. My personal favorite is Merriam-Webster. Merriam-Webster is a fantastic dictionary resource. They have tons of historical information, and I really do just sit and read things on the dictionary page. They provide definitions, example sentences, and they also have what's called a learner's dictionary. If you find a word you don't recognize, you can check it in a learner's dictionary, which gives you a simple explanation in simple English of that word. Instead of checking it in your native language, you can check it in your target language. Using a learner's dictionary can help you understand the word you are focused on in the language you're studying, not your native language. This can be really, really useful. All right, want to get cheat sheets, audiobooks, lessons, apps, and much more every month for free? Just click the link in the description to get your free language gifts of the month. 10 ways to report speech. Let's go. Say. The first word is say. As a verb, say is a very neutral word you can use to report someone's speech or to explain something someone said in the past. For example, he said the barbecue was canceled. This is just a simple, neutral report. Tell. The next verb is tell. Tell is used when one person is giving information to another, to tell someone something they did not know before. Don't say, "Tell me your phone number." That's weird. Instead, say, "Can you tell me where the station is?" Or, "Can you tell me where to buy a hamburger?" Or, "Can you tell me where to pick up my new car?" This is about giving someone information they don't know or explaining something one way to another person. Another example sentence is, "My boss told me I was doing a good job." Speak. The next one is speak. We use speak when we're talking about language ability, like I speak English or I speak Japanese. We can use speak in the past tense to report something, but it usually sounds a little more formal. For example, I spoke to my boss about, or I spoke to my parents about, or I spoke to my boyfriend or girlfriend about. Using speak instead of talked makes it sound a little more formal. In a sentence, my colleagues spoke with me about an upcoming project. Was like. Okay, the next one and the next two actually are very, very casual expressions. When you're speaking with friends and you're talking about a quick, maybe somewhat emotional conversation, you will hear native speakers, especially Americans, use the phrase was like. For example, I was like, he was like, she was like. This is a very casual way to report speech, and you'll hear it often very quickly, like I was like, what? And then she was like, no. And then I was like, yeah. It's a quick way to report speech, but the subject changes. This is a really fun one, and if you can use this naturally, it'll help you sound more natural too. In a sentence, and then he was like, I love that movie. Was all. The next one is was all. Similar to was like, we have the expression was all. Don't worry about the word all. It doesn't mean the whole of something or a complete something. Instead, was all is used to report speech, usually when there's some kind of emotional aspect to your conversation, or it's a little dramatic or maybe exciting. We use it the same way as was like in that quick style of speaking. For example, and then he was like, and I was all, and then she was like, and I was all. I was all has a little more emphasis, used when you want to express a stronger emotion. In a sentence, and I was all, oh my God, me too. Talk. The next word is talk. Similar to say, talk is a fairly neutral verb when reporting speech. You'll use it in a situation where someone is giving new information to you, but maybe it's a two-way conversation. For example, we talked about, or my boss talked to me about. With talk, there's an exchange happening. For example, I talked to my friend about my new apartment. Remember to use to or with when referring to the person or entity you're talking to and about for the subject. In a sentence, she talked to me about my family. Mention. The next one is mention. Mention is used when there's just one small point in a conversation, a side note, or maybe something someone says quickly. It's not the focus of the conversation, but just a little thing you hear. For example, you mentioned something about a new project. It's not the main focus, but just a little bit of information. In a sentence, our manager mentioned upcoming changes at the company. To go on and on. The next expression is to go on and on. This means to talk for a very long time. For example, the speaker at the seminar was going on and on about the topic. If you want to emphasize it, you can say, going on and on and on and on. This expression is used when someone talks excessively. According to. The next expression is according to. This is used to officially report something. For example, according to sources, according to the police, according to the government official, or according to my teacher. It's about giving a source for your information. In a sentence, according to a witness at the scene, the suspect escaped. Report. The next one is report. Report is used in more official situations to share information. For example, to report to the police, to report to your teacher, or to report to your boss. It can mean to submit documentation or to share information officially. In a sentence, sources in the area report that the accident was not serious. Top 10 must-know phrases for the restaurant. Sure, here is your text with punctuation marks added. Let's get started. A table for 3, please. A table for 3, please. You tell them the number of people that you are total, so that the host can bring you to an appropriate table. A table for 2, please. A table for 5, please. Could I please see a menu? Could I please see a menu? Usually, menus are given to you as soon as you sit down at your table. But if that's not the case and you need to ask, this is a polite way to do it. Could I please see a menu? I'd like to try this dish. I'd like to try this dish. When looking at a menu, hopefully, you'll find something you want to eat. I'd like to try this dish. Could you leave out the onions? Could you leave out the onions? If there is an ingredient in the dish that you're ordering that you don't want, you can always ask the waiter if it could be prepared without that ingredient. For example, I might say, could I get the burger but with no cheese? Could you pass the salt? Could you pass the salt? When you're at a restaurant, especially if you're at a big table with a lot of people, you might not always be able to reach things, so you would ask, could you pass me the salt? Could you pass me the ketchup? Could you pass me another napkin? Waiter, waiter. A waiter is someone who takes your order and brings you food. In America and in many other Western countries, it's more polite to call a waiter to your table by simply saying, excuse me. Or if you see another waiter walking by, but it's not your waiter, you can always say, excuse me, if you see our waiter, could you please let them know to come to our table? Can we get separate checks? Can we get separate checks? This is actually something that's very common, especially in America. You might go out with a group of friends, or even if you're on a date, sometimes you might want to get separate checks, pay for your own things. That way, you can all pay separately just for what you yourself ordered, and you won't have to worry about owing each other money or calculating off a big, huge bill. Are there any specials today? Are there any specials today? A special at a restaurant is a dish that isn't usually on the menu. It's something that's special that the chef is offering that day or that week or that month. So sometimes, if you don't see what the specials are, you'd ask your waiter, excuse me, are there any specials today? Could we have the bill, please? Could we have the bill, please? This is how you request that the check or the bill comes to your table. Can we get the check, please? Could we get the bill, please? You're asking this to your waiter, who will then bring you the check and you can pay. 10 words that you can use at a bar. Let's go. To buy a round. The first expression is to buy a round. To buy a round means to buy a round of drinks. Essentially, a round of drinks means one drink for everyone in your group, one drink for everyone in your party. By the way, the word party is used to mean group at a bar or restaurant. The number of people in your party is the number of people in your group. So to buy a round means to buy a drink for everybody. In a sentence, our boss began the party by buying everyone a round. In a different sentence, you're buying the next round. On the rocks. The next expression is on the rocks. On the rocks is a way to order a drink. When you say on the rocks, it means your drink is served on ice only. So rocks are the ice in your glass. You can imagine the ice, the pieces of ice in your glass, the ice cubes, or an ice ball. These are like rocks. So saying, I'd like whiskey, for example, on the rocks, means just whiskey served over ice. That's what on the rocks means. So in a sentence, I'd like a gin on the rocks. Straight up. The next expression is straight up. A straight-up drink is different from an on-the-rocks drink. A straight-up drink is chilled with ice, but it's strained so there's no ice in the drink, but it has been chilled with ice. So a straight-up drink, there's nothing else in the glass, but it is a chilled drink. In a sentence, I'd like a martini straight up. Some people use the words straight or straight up, but they mean neat, which is the next word we're going to talk about. So keep in mind, straight or straight up means chilled. That's one of the key points here. So yeah, a martini straight up is a chilled martini. Neat. The next expression is neat. To order a drink neat means the drink is not chilled and there is no ice. It's just the alcohol. It's just the liquor. There's nothing special about it. A neat drink is only the drink, that's it. Nothing happens to it. So in a sentence, I'd like a whiskey neat. Pint, half pint. The next expression is really two expressions. These are words you use when you order beer. They are pint and half pint. Depending on the country that you live in, a pint can be a different size. They vary by a few milliliters depending on the country where you live. A half pint then is roughly half of the pint size. So a half pint and a pint are two sizes we use to order beer. In a sentence, can I have a half pint of this stout? Chaser. The next expression is chaser. A chaser is something you use to follow an alcoholic drink. Chasers are often used after shots. Shots are small drinks that are usually kind of strong in alcohol content, and they have a very strong taste. So some people like to have something after that, and they call it a chaser. So the image is that the second drink is chasing the first drink into your body. You can think of it that way. The chaser is a non-alcoholic drink, so it could be water, it could be soda, it could be something like that, juice maybe. So chaser. In a sentence, shots of tequila are often followed with chasers. To be tipsy. The next word is to be tipsy. To be tipsy is a way to describe your feeling when you're drinking. So if you can imagine when you're standing straight up, when you're standing regularly, you're very confident and tall, and you don't move very much. But if you feel tipsy, this comes from the verb to tip, like this. So something tips to one side or another. Think of your body in this way. So we use the word tipsy, the adjective tipsy, to describe this feeling. Maybe you're not so steady on your feet. You could tip over at any time. That's called being tipsy from alcohol. So in a sentence, I'm a little tipsy, I need some water. To be drunk. The next expression is to be drunk. We talked about the word tipsy. Tipsy is a little bit like a little unsteady, but drunk is just a mess. You're just a disaster. Maybe you're being noisy, you're being loud. It's difficult to control your body or your friend's body, whatever. So drunk is usually seen as a negative thing. So drunk expresses it's just not pretty sometimes. So in a sentence, your friend is drunk, let's take him home. To call it a night. The next expression is to call it a night. To call it a night means to decide to finish at the bar to go home. You're ready to be done. So here, I'm going to call it. I'm going to say, this is tonight. Tonight is finished. So in a sentence, it's been a long evening, I'm going to call it a night. I'm going to go home. I'm done. It's a casual expression. Hangover. And then one more that you can use maybe the day after you visit a bar is hangover. A hangover is a noun. Hangover is the word we use to describe the feelings after drinking too much. Maybe you feel sick to your stomach, you have a headache, your body is sore. There are a number of different feelings you might have when you feel hungover. To be hungover is another way to say it, but when you have a hangover, it usually doesn't feel very good. In a sentence, I have a hangover today, I'm not going drinking tonight. About the top 25 English phrases. So let's get started. The first phrase is hello. Hello, of course, is used as a greeting. You can greet your friends, you can greet your coworkers, your family with this phrase just by saying, hello, hey, hi, what's up, hello, sup, yo. Pretty much any time of day you can use hello. Hello. The next phrase is good morning. Good morning is used as a greeting in the morning. You can kind of feel when morning ends for you. The next phrase is sorry. Sorry is used to apologize for something. You can use sorry when you've made a mistake or if you've done something that may have inconvenienced someone else. For example, I'm sorry for being late, or sorry, I didn't mean to bump into you. The next phrase is excuse me. Excuse me is used to get someone's attention or to apologize for a minor inconvenience. You might use it to interrupt a conversation politely, to ask for help, or to move past someone. For example, excuse me, can I get by? Or excuse me, could you help me with this? The next phrase is I don't understand. I don't understand is used when you don't comprehend something that has been said or explained. This is a straightforward way to ask for clarification. For example, I don't understand what you mean. Could you explain it again? The next phrase is, can you help me? Can you help me? Is a polite way to ask for assistance. You might use this phrase when you need help with something or if you're seeking guidance. For example, can you help me find my way? Or can you help me with this problem? The next phrase is, how much does this cost? How much does this cost? Is used to inquire about the price of an item or service. It's a common question when shopping or dining out. For example, how much does this dress cost? Or, how much does the meal cost? The next phrase is, where is the bathroom? Where is the bathroom? Is a useful question to ask when you need to find the restroom. It's a polite and clear way to request information. For example, excuse me, where is the bathroom? Or, can you tell me where the nearest bathroom is? The next phrase is, I'd like to make a reservation. I'd like to make a reservation is used when you want to book a table at a restaurant, a room at a hotel, or any other service that requires prior booking. For example, I'd like to make a reservation for 2 at 7 p.m. The next phrase is, can I get this to go? Can I get this to go? Is used when you want to take your food with you instead of dining in. This phrase is often used at restaurants or cafes. For example, can I get this pizza to go? Or can I get this coffee to go? The next phrase is, do you have any recommendations? Do you have any recommendations? Is a polite way to ask for suggestions, whether you're looking for a good meal, a drink, or something to do. For example, do you have any recommendations for a good book? Or, do you have any recommendations for a nice restaurant nearby? The next phrase is, I'm lost. I'm lost is used when you are unsure of your location or need help finding your way. For example, I'm lost, can you help me find this address? Or, I'm lost, could you give me directions? The next phrase is, could you repeat that, please? Could you repeat that, please? Is a polite way to ask someone to say something again if you didn't hear or understand it the first time. For example, could you repeat that, please? I didn't catch what you said. The next phrase is, I need to go. I need to go is used when you have to leave a place or end a conversation. It's a direct way to indicate that you need to depart. For example, I need to go now, I have an appointment, or I need to go, it's getting late. The next phrase is, I'm not sure. I'm not sure is used when you are uncertain about something or don't have a definite answer. For example, I'm not sure if I can make it to the meeting, or I'm not sure how to fix this problem. The next phrase is, can you show me? Can you show me? Is used when you need someone to demonstrate or point out something. For example, can you show me how to use this machine? Or can you show me where the nearest ATM is? The next phrase is there Wi-Fi here? Is there Wi-Fi here? Is used to ask if a place offers internet access. It's a common question in cafes, restaurants, and public spaces. For example, is there Wi-Fi here? Or do you have Wi-Fi available? The next phrase is, I'd like a refund. I'd like a refund is used when you want to return a product or request money back for a service. For example, I'd like a refund for this defective item, or I'd like a refund for the service I didn't receive. The next phrase is, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm sorry to bother you is used to apologize for interrupting or asking for assistance. It's a polite way to address someone when you need their help. For example, I'm sorry to bother you, but could you help me with this? The next phrase is, can I speak to the manager? Can I speak to the manager? Is used when you need to talk to a person in charge, often to resolve an issue or make a complaint. For example, can I speak to the manager about the service I received? Or can I speak to the manager regarding my bill? The next phrase is, I'm just browsing. I'm just browsing is used when you are looking around in a store or place, but don't need immediate assistance. For example, I'm just browsing, thank you, or I'm just browsing the selection right now. The next phrase is, I'd like to return this. I'd like to return this is used when you want to give back a purchase. It's often used when you are dissatisfied with an item. For example, I'd like to return this shirt, it doesn't fit. The next phrase is, can you give me directions? Can you give me directions? Is used when you need guidance on how to get to a location. For example, can you give me directions to the nearest train station? Or, can you give me directions to your office? The next phrase is, I'm allergic to. I'm allergic to is used to inform others about any allergies you have, particularly in restaurants or when discussing health concerns. For example, I'm allergic to peanuts or I'm allergic to penicillin. The next phrase is, I need to make a complaint. I need to make a complaint is used when you want to formally express dissatisfaction with a service or product. For example, I need to make a complaint about the noise in my room, or I need to make a complaint about the food. The next phrase is, can I get a receipt? Can I get a receipt? Is used when you want proof of purchase. For example, can I get a receipt for this transaction? Or can I get a receipt for my records? The next phrase is, I'd like to order now. I'd like to order now is used when you're ready to place an order at a restaurant or shop. For example, I'd like to order now, please, or I'd like to order the steak. The next phrase is this seat taken? Is this seat taken? Is used to ask if a seat is available for you to sit in. For example, is this seat taken or can I sit here? Or is this seat free? The next phrase is I'll have. I'll have is used when ordering food or drinks. For example, I'll have the chicken salad or I'll have a coffee. The next phrase is, could you please speak more slowly? Could you please speak more slowly? Is used when you need someone to talk at a slower pace to understand better. For example, could you please speak more slowly? I'm learning English.